Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony, Chair of the Providence City Council Finance Committee. I'm calling this regular meeting to order at 5 p.m. on Monday, May 1st, 2023. Madam Clerk, would you read the roll, please?
Chairwoman Helen D'Antoni,
Present.
Vice Chairman Juan Pichardo,
Present.
Councilman James Taylor,
Here.
Councilor Sue Engelbach, here, Councilor Miguel Sanchez.
Here.
We have 5 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. And tonight we are joined by Council President Rachel Miller, by Councilor Oscar Vargas. And we also today have our Senior Assistant City Solicitor, Eddie Shaw. Welcome back. We're thrilled to have you back with the city.
Fourth year resident.
Our free resident, and can I say George Marco? Oh, yes, and Donna Felician, our clerks, and then I have the Madam Auditor, Gina Costa. Okay,
So noted.
and many distinguished guests, so thank you all for coming. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have it to entertain a motion to amend the agenda this evening. We have, our assessor is going to be on the agenda, and we did not have the assessor on this agenda, so, I'm going to amend the agenda of the assessor to tonight's meeting.
So. Second.
By Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Pichardo. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk, please read agenda item 1.
Item number 1, resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21-26B2, special event support grantees, Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism, $200,000.
And who do we have presenting this evening?
Joe Wilson Jr., Director.
Great, if you would please come and be sworn in. Please raise your right hand.
My first time to be judge.
We will.
Do swear on the penalty of perjury that the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So,
Art, Culture, and Tourism.
Yes. Please.
Breakdown of what they're asking for, also our panel scoring for each of these awards, and a copy of the original RFP. So I speak to you as,
We're gonna hold on just
sure.
1 minute so we can have participants exhibit.
Can I have one more?
Oh, they're over here. There's an
I
extra
can-
copy.
Just 1 minute, and may I have a motion to mark this as exhibit 1.
so move.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Amberlaw. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Calling this exhibit 1, is that correct, Madam Clerk? Okay. All right, Ms. Wilson, proceed.
So I come to you today as not only the Director of Art, Culture, and Tourism, but I come to you as a theater practitioner for almost 30 years. And so I've witnessed firsthand the effects of COVID on our community. These organizations all will benefit greatly from this funding. They continue to struggle. And what's especially interesting about the special events programming is we tend to think of it, you know, to compensate us for a show at Community Rep or to compensate us for a show at Community Music Works. But the capacity to be able to produce events within our neighborhoods is also very important, which is why you see the WBNA, for example, within this group, and also our cultural organizations that produce events such as the Puerto Rican Day Festival. All of our festivals are a very important part of our cultural and heritage landscape here in Providence and Rhode Island. And so that's just trying to give you a sense of the scope of when you think of an event, that it's not just, you know, a festival or a PVD fest or a high line item like a show at a theater, but these are also ways that our community organizations, neighborhood organizations, and cultural organizations create outreach and opportunities to also fundraise for their organizations.
Would you just briefly describe the process that you went through for these allocations?
Sure. First of all, we develop an RFP, and we're very transparent in the processes and making sure that our rubric is defendable. My department is all about access, equity, and transparency. And to be brutally honest with you, we did not fund anybody. We provided everyone with funding that applied. How we decided, we had $200,000 in this particular round. And so really it was about looking at organizational need and capacity, and using that as a guide in terms of how we ultimately would provide a dollar amount for these awards, but we did not turn down anyone who applied.
May I just clarify, so did you provide everyone with what they were asking for?
No, we did not.
Okay. But everyone who applied received some.
That is correct.
Committee members? Any questions?
Just one.
Yes.
Kiss Me in Action didn't ask for any money.
Uh,
The Dominican Festival.
They were funded, I believe, in round one.
Councilor Pacheco.
Thank you. So this came before the Board of Contractors, is that what? Respectful with yours, sir?
Yes.
That's
Is that part of
correct.
that item?
That's
Okay,
correct.
I just wanted to check. You indicated that everyone that applied got funded. And how would the organizations notified in terms of, well, you weren't here, but
Right.
how would they notify the organizations in Providence to apply?
You are correct, this is before me, but I'm assuming that we put an RFP like we would for anything, and folks submitted applications. I really, without speaking an oath to keep in mind, I'd rather go back and check and get more clarity around how organizations found out about this, but, we're very great about putting things on our website and in our blog about the availability of any resources being provided by the city of Providence.
So I will be interested in finding out what was that RFP and was there an additional push for organizations to apply within the database? Yeah, I would like to get that.
I recognize Madam Auditor to possibly offer some clarification on that.
Sure.
This was referred because it was done through the local process. Any awards for ARPA that's done through local, so it did not go through an RFP, it went through notice of funding availability.
So there was no RFP.
Correct.
But a no for second RFP, right?
So
Oh, sorry.
can someone clarify?
Yes, so I'm going to recognize our
Chief operating.
thank you. Chief operating
Circus assistant. You swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. You did. I didn't state any of that.
Courtney Hawkins, Chief Operating Officer. Would be easier if I could just refer to you as chief, which I will be.
Or
referring
Courtney,
to.
that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
So the auditor is right per usual. As I think we've explained to this group before, when we came into office, there were a number of procurements that were done for ARPA money through a NOFA process, which is, it is an RFP out of a department, but it didn't go through Board of Contractors. So it is publicly posted and people could apply, but it didn't go through the normal Board of Contracts process. And so we evaluated all of those in instances where everyone got money, like this one, where we know there was a lot of need and where it was a process that happened a while ago. We recommended that we continue and make those awards, but transparently, and moving forward, all of the ARPA money is going through an RFP process, which is something that Director Wilson and I can control. But we've heard from a lot of organizations the importance of this money. We looked at the review process, which was very comprehensive. In other instances, when we looked into the review process, we couldn't understand what anyone did, and so we did not move forward. But it is our recommendation that, given the fact that there was a comprehensive review, given the fact that it wasn't that some vendors weren't selected and others were, given the need for this in this community, that we move forward. It is in the spirit of the ordinance to allocate the money in this way, and so that's why we're here before you today.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Pacheco?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So just to be clear, So that way, even the director, as he indicated that there was an RFP, but there was no RFP. But it was internally, and you reviewed it, in essence, that you determined that it went through a rigorous process that in essence, everyone met the criteria and that everybody got funded.
That's right, and you know, a NOFA is in fact an RFP-like process. It is just not done, was not done through the formal city RFP, but there was an opportunity for people to apply for money, submit proposals. You know, it's another acronym that means a very similar thing, and I think that's what the director was speaking to,
Yes.
but did not go through the Board of Contracts process.
Sure. We, as a city, have two criteria going forward as a NOFA and also as what is stated as in terms of all contracts that need to go through the RFP.
There are some circumstances where the city has historically used NOFAs, in particular as it relates to CDBG, which has been kind of deemed as compliant with procurement. But as it relates to the ARPA money, we're doing it all through Board of Contracts, all with the formal RFP. And the NOFA construct as it related to ARPA was something that was done under the last administration. And so we've just been trying to evaluate the best way to handle each award as we move forward.
And the money that for each organization, they've already done or performed what they were going to do, and they just need to be paid, or is this something that they're being paid to do something this year?
My understanding is that this is, tell me if this is wrong, that this is like a revenue recovery for lost money during COVID. So it's kind of like the equivalent of when we gave money to small businesses that had lost money. So it's not that we're asking them to do something new moving forward. It's aimed at trying to mitigate the effects of COVID on these organizations.
Correct.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Sanchez.
When these nonprofits, because I think most of them are nonprofits, apply, do they submit any like supporting documents? Like, I want to take it for their word. I believe they were impacted, kind of just from living in the city. For like, what are we doing anything to verify the finances that they were impacted by some of these amounts that they are saying?
Yes, they submit supporting documents up to this effect. And so, yeah, they do.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Are we gonna do another round of grants like this?
Not specifically like this, no.
Not the cultural, the one that you may be thinking of that we did. So another example was the Artistic Community Organizations one, which we actually pulled back. That we just put out a new RFP for. And so people that went through Board of Contracts, so those awards are coming in the, next couple of months. There aren't any more outstanding that are similar to this.
And could I just say that these organizations that are in this package were caught up in a process that became bogged down from no fault of their own. And so for many of these organizations, this is not about new spending. This is truly about them continuing to get their bottom line in place with the effects of COVID, which continues to be an issue. So the stakes are high for these organizations who are actually have been applied a long time ago and waiting for this money. So this is old. This is old money. This money has been spent.
Okay, Council Ramos.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chairwoman. And this is less a question than a comment that I just totally agree. I know when I talked with the Hope Street merchants last year, even just like while I was campaigning and just because I live right off Hope Street, they were like, where is this money? I applied for this a long time ago. And it was to them like an example of the city not working, and their festivals are what bring people to Hope Street to spend money. So those businesses have just been struggling so much, and they do so much to like beautify and do festivals and bring people there. And without that, a lot of the businesses have really been struggling. So thank you for pushing this forward and making sure the money goes out.
Okay, any other questions? Discussion? All right, we ready to vote?
Yeah.
Let's vote.
Motion?
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Council Pichardo, seconded by Council Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 2?
Item number 2, resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply, various vendors, in accordance with section 21-26B1. Various vendors, Office of Economy Opportunity, $1,501,625,018.
Okay, and who do we have here to present?
Kadeem Wesley, Deputy Director of Economic Opportunity.
Please come to the table, join us.
You swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. So I just have a couple of documents here that I just want to point out.
I also am going to interrupt you for a minute. I wanted to recognize Councilor Shelley Peterson for joining us also. Thank you.
So noted.
Madam Chair, before we take this up, can I recuse myself because I'm on the board of South Lake?
Yes, we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't. She's just
Okay, and may I have a motion to, I think we can mark these together, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's right.
I have a motion to mark these exhibits together, 2 pages, guidelines for rating feeders and rakers, and the summary. I have a motion to mark this as exhibit number 2. Motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Pichardo. All in favor? All opposed? All right, thank you. Mr. Wesley.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the Finance Committee, City Council. It's great being here today to present this to all of you. So my name is Kadeem Wesley, Deputy Director of Economic Opportunity. I've been with the city now for 4 years in the Office of Economic Opportunity, which is really just put in place for our equity initiatives and really working for low-income and unemployed residents for Providence as well. So I started off as the youth employment coordinator for the city, and I was working on a grant that we had through the state at the time, which was placing interns directly in internships in Providence. So I was working with the interns, going to the schools, working with the interns as far as recruiting and also upskilling in terms of mock interviews, getting them ready for that job. And then also working with companies and employers in Providence to build out what those internships look like, and then also refer those youth back to those internships. So what I saw during that time was that these programs are just really critical for our youth of Providence. In terms of equity, just making sure that we have these programs in place to ensure that our residents are on a level playing field when it comes time to join the future workforce of tomorrow. And then also on a personal note for myself as well, I remember like back in 2008 when I was looking for my first summer job, I actually had gotten a placement through the city to be working on a soda company at the time. So we learned resume skills, work readiness, all the foundations of what you need to be successful. And I just remember thinking after that, it was just a lot easier for me to go out, interview, and actually get a job the next summer. So I didn't answer that. So this program here is actually part of the Eat, Play, Learn (PVD) initiative, which is a nationally recognized initiative that provides our kids and also youth and families with the access of healthy food, outdoor play, skill building, creative engagement. specifically about the One Providence for Youth Employment Program. So it's a workforce development system for youth 14 to 24 within Providence that engages the youth in cultural and age-appropriate learning. So it offers 21st century skills, communication, creativity, problem solving, et cetera, et cetera. And at its foundation, it's a 6-week program. Typically, the first week, 20 hours, is all about work readiness, building those soft skills, building that job readiness and training. And then after that, it's essentially a 2-tiered model. So a lot of our younger youth, 14 and 15, typically go into a service learning program where it's more project learning based, and they're focused on a community project of their interest. And then the second program that we have for our more older adults, emerging adults rather, is our work experience program, which is essentially after that first 20 weeks, 20 hours, they're essentially referred out to an internship. So that's essentially the program at its core. Our program also focuses on several areas which were also included in the RFP, which I'll talk about the procurement process in a second. So we also focus on youth who are on track to graduate, out of school youth, justice involved youth, which we actually had a program last year that we went into the training schools and we had a provider do that. So it was a really great program. We focus on multilingual learners and also youth with disabilities. So just talking a little bit about the procurement process for this program. So it was done specifically through an RFP process. And typically it's a competitive process that we do for the jobs program. So it was sent out to about 130 different organizations, which is just made up of a list of past participants in terms of organizations, and just any one that we can think of that can possibly run a new jobs program. So that's who it was sent out to. It was advertised on November 7th, 2022. And this was actually a 6-week cycle. So we actually just extended the time frame, the initial time frame of 4 weeks by 2 additional weeks, just considering the amount of RFPs and NOFAs and such that were out during that time. We just wanted to make sure that we're giving nonprofits, the ability to just realistically apply and receive the award for the funding. So as far as awards, there were 12 total organizations that had applied for this funding to be a part of the program, and all 12 organizations were actually funded. Just speaking a little bit about our review committee. So it was a review team of 5 reviewers in total that reviewed these proposals. And it was set based on a set criteria that they all had to go through. And then the other document that you have in front of you, which is the guidelines, that's essentially the document that we went over at the start of the review process. Just to really let them know what are the best practices of reviewing a proposal, what to look for, how to go about it, and then also taking them through the conflict of interest piece, just to make sure that there are no conflicts that they may have with the potential bidder, to make sure that it's just a clean cut process.
Yes, Councilor Taylor.
How'd you come up with these figures? I guess my question is, why didn't we take the total given out and divide it by 12, which would be like 125,000? Why did some of them get a lot more than others? Did they ask for that?
Absolutely. So these amounts here are just all based off of what the organization proposed.
So Federal Hill House asked for $301,000.
So they didn't ask exactly for 300,000. I believe it was a little over that. There was an equal reduction that was done equally across each program. But so typically when an organization applies for the summer grant, they typically apply based off of their capacity to be able to provide that program. So Federal Hill House is more experienced in terms of running this program typically for the summer, so they may apply for a larger program, whereas a small organization that doesn't have as much capacity may not apply for that large scale for program.
How much did the Boys and Girls Club of Providence, they ask for?
So I can actually get that to you on that
Well,
amount.
that's what they got, 32,000, but did they ask? I'm just saying, I don't understand why, like, if they have that much money divided by 12, because it's only 12 to put in, why they wouldn't get 125,000 each?
Well, just with the competitive bidding process, they have to include a price with their bid. So that's why the awards are based on the initial price that they have put forward.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So did we have this total to begin with, like the 1.5 million? Or like where did that number come from? I know it's the total of these, but like, did you guys have like a ballpark to play with, like in awarding this, or where did that total come from?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So we had an internal total that we had as far as the budget for the program. So we had the second round of ARPA funding for the youth jobs program, which was 995,000. And then we also had an additional amount which was left over from previous programs, just based on the expenditures of past programs. So typically, a program will never spend 100% of the funds that are in the budget. So from some of those savings that we had, it was put forward to this project.
So is this, how many years have we been running a youth workforce training program?
So I believe for this iteration, like just sort of like this, since 2017. But previous to that, we had similar programming, but it was through like state funding.
Yeah, I just asked because I think this is great. This gives us opportunity to the youth, young adults in our community. What I would like to see is that number increasing from year to year. So I don't know what it was for last year, but that's just my comment.
So
Can I just ask, so you said this is the second round of ARPA funding, I'm sorry, what was the first round for?
yeah, so in ordinance 1, there was, I believe it was 1 million for year-round jobs. And there was also 1 million for summer jobs, for expanding summer jobs. So we ran the year-round jobs program. And I believe 2021, that's when we had also moved to providing opportunities at 50 miles per hour. So a piece of that summer fund, those summer funds went towards that increase, and then the rest of it was utilized the following summer.
So prior to the ARPA funding, it was in the city budget? Is that how you were funded?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councilor Sanchez, does that answer your
Yes.
question? All right. I'm sorry, any other committee members? All right, Councilor Vargas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Those 73% that you're talking about here, say you refer from high school. The top, 73%. Do you know which high schools are these ones?
Yeah, so these actually represent, it's primarily Providence Public Schools, and I can definitely share with you as a follow-up. But just it's primarily PPSD schools, and the bulk of the students are coming from Juanita Sanchez, Central High School, Hope High School, Mount Pleasant High School. But I can definitely share that information with you afterwards as well.
Can I ask?
Yes, go right ahead.
There are also, if I may, there are also a small amount of like charter schools represented as well.
Are these comprehensive community action program, 311 Dory Island Cranston, that's out of Providence. How they qualify this?
Yeah, so essentially when we,
$47,000.
yeah, so essentially when we look at just the programs that are being provided, we typically look at, you know, the organization and their qualifications, what they can provide for the students and the residents. And then we take that and from there decide if they qualify to have a program. So specifically speaking on comprehensive community action programs, they actually have 2 locations. So they have a Cranston site and then they have a Providence site. So for our program specifically, it will be run out of Providence site.
I wonder why they didn't put it on the side.
Well, I think just reporting wise, that's their like their office address that they use for reporting. So that's just typically why. But typically, when we do the contracts, we have a programmatic address and we have like an administrative address. So we have the two different addresses included.
So just to follow up, so the program is serving the Providence youth.
Yes, correct. All of the youth service through this project are all Providence.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Councilor Charter.
And then, 12, an RFP was put out, 12 organizations applied for the $1.5 million. And basically, it was their responsibility just to get the money out, correct?
What do you mean?
Yeah, to just award the money. That was.
You mean for the organizations that applied?
Yes,
Um,
or the pot of money that you had for this cycle.
yes.
Yes, so I'm just paraphrasing and also just what I just heard. 12 applied and 12 were awarded all the money that they requested. Did all the organizations that applied, again, going back to the question that was asked before, did they get all the same amount as they requested?
So no, so they did not get the same amounts that they requested, and that was just based on the budget that we had available for the total project. But we had all of the programs were essentially deemed qualified, and because we're essentially serving such a unique population, there are some programs that might serve specifically like justice involved youth. Some programs may serve like youth with disabilities a little bit more, so it just made sense to use them all as one comprehensive project. But so, I'm not sure if that answered the.
Yeah, that answered the question. And just to make sure everybody understand, this is not just all these programs. It's a youth program. Everyone is on board to service the youth, and we need more. I just want to make sure, in essence, what I'm asking, in a sense, is get to the bottom of it, in a sense that, you know, where all the organizations in the city are probably given the same opportunity, right? And that's the bottom line, right? Just because now all the organizations service all children and different sectors, the reality is when we look at the monies, we want to make sure, I want to make sure that at least there's some transparency. And that yes, you did go through that process of some type of, RFP and so forth and got awarded. I just want to make sure that as it goes forward. The other is in terms of the youth development. You indicated that prior to you, the city used to do the workforce development for youth. In essence, was done through the state or with state money.
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
So that was definitely well before my time, but so the program was out of the mayor's office prior to myself, and I believe prior to 2017. And it was done through JDF funding, which is like state funding, and it's sort of like GWB, which is the government workforce board. So,
Okay.
so it was. Yeah, so a different funding mechanism, but if you look back at those reports, you'll see it's a lot of the same program providers that were.
Yes. These monies now is for future programming for youth for 2023 and 2024.
Yes.
Correct. Was there any consideration in terms of some of the funding that's given to these organizations when they receive CDBG money?
So essentially, no consideration was given for any of the other projects that these programs were awarded for. All of the proposals were evaluated. How they look by themselves as far as proposals, and we really just looked at it as can they provide a quality youth program. We weren't necessarily looking at the other funding mechanisms that they were getting. because it's not like these are just operational guys that are going towards like their operations. It's more towards a specific project, which is the youth employment program. So I believe, so just a little bit, so we do, when we get to like the invoicing, we do look at like if there are like similar programs that they have, just to make sure that organizations aren't double dipping per se. But we didn't look at that specific extortion.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that whole thing about, if you can just expand on the lines, I know it's has some explanation here in the report, where it says that on the basis of said bids, we recommend multiple bidders identified on lines 1 through 12. The review of the bids revealed that it is in the best interest of the city of Providence to utilize these bidders together. What does that mean? I mean, I know that there's an explanation here, but I haven't had the opportunity to read this here. What was
Yes,
that
absolutely.
again?
So-
Can you just,
Yeah, so essentially when we come together for this program, it's essentially looked at as like one comprehensive project. So we're pulling all of these providers together and we do monthly provider meetings. We bring everyone in to one session, and it's sort of like a collaboration. For example, if there's one program where they have a youth that might not be the best fit for that particular program, they can cross-refer to other organizations within the program. So it's really just looked at as like one comprehensive program where we're just all meeting, working towards one common goal. So.
Yes.
out of these organizations, what will be the follow-up and the accountability towards this organization? What is the plan?
Yeah, so essentially as a part of this project, of course, there will be a contract in place for each organization. There's also monthly reporting that we are going to require as a city. So that's going to include narratives. You know, how did you perform this month as far as a program? How close are you to your goals? If you're not close to your goals, like what can you do to be in alignment to meet your goals by the end of the program? Questions of that nature to figure out what's happening inside of the programs. And then also we're going to be requesting data every month to just show like demographic wise, how many youth do you have enrolled this month? How is that different from last month? Where are you from, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be data requirements as part of this.
Yes, Councilor Taylor.
I'm just gonna go back to the one we just received, where they gave us, wasn't yours, it was the quick overview of the APA, where it lists that what they asked for and what we gave them. Do you have like a quick breakdown of what they asked for and what we gave them?
So I don't have that with me.
Okay, let me ask you, zero in more. How much did the Alliance of Rhode Island Southeast Asian for Education ask for?
So for that program specifically, they asked for 75,000.
We don't have the others that, what they asked for. I'm just trying to see if we like overpaid some of them or what, like I said, my thing is to get 12 people, 125,000 to make it fair. And they're all good programs, but it just questions me why one would get 300 and the other would get 32.
And that's definitely a really good point. But once again, it's really based off of their capacity and what.
Right, no, if they only asked for 32,000, shame on them, they should ask them what they need.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm trying to figure out what each one asked for.
And actually, there needs to be a correction made for specifically for boys and girls club, because that they asked the amount, the award amount was essentially more for that organization. But it's really just dependent on their current capacity to provide the programs. Like, for example, Goodwill, I know Goodwill of Southern New England is going to ask for between 50 and 75,000 each year, just because they don't have the capacity to go over that. And that's additionally tied to that amount of youth that they're going to be serving throughout the program as well. So, like I said, there are programs that are able to serve 100 youth in the summer, and some programs are only able to serve 20 youth in the summer. So that's why the numbers vary so much.
So the reason, so they applied for these close to this amount, and you also said that each one of them will apply an equal reduction. In some cases, just so, okay, all right.
No,
Yes, Counselor. I would like to
Yeah,
recognize-
we're trying to figure out, base bid, what is that? That was the amount they asked for? Base, it's right next to your vendor.
So I believe I'm sorry. Okay, yes, this is perfect. So base bid is the amount that they asked for initially, and total award was the final amount. So each program had, and thank you so much for pointing that out. So each program had a 33.14% reduction. That was applied equally based on the number that they applied for initially.
Okay, Counselor Peterson.
And just a clarification question, is there a max amount that they could apply for?
No, there's no max.
Okay. Everybody's questions answered.
Thank you.
Okay, really good presentation. So, discussion? Vote? Motion? Motion?
I can't make the motion. 'cause
I'm sorry, we have a recusal.
so I recuse myself for the Southside Land Trust.
Okay,
My
so
son
that,
participates in the summer program, so on that item.
okay, so that is,
I'll make a motion to approve.
We got legal here.
Hello.
Yeah, this is E.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 3 there. That should be 1.
okay.
It should be fine.
Give me a second.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Unless you take it one by one.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Counselor Sanchez. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And clerk, I am going to ask if you motion to waive the reading. Numbers. Numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6, and also to discuss them together.
I'll make the motion to waive the reading of 3 through 6, items 3 through 6, and discuss together.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Vanderwall, seconded by Counselor Sanchez. We're on to the main event, so, we have to see what's presenting tonight. Chiefs.
Madam Chair, if I may. Additional members of the finance team, including 2 directors and members of the finance divisions. They are here and they asked if you could swear them all at the same time. If they need to be called upon, we'll have them at the start.
Thank you. Raise your right hands.
You swear on account of your perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You state all your names for the record.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer of City of Providence.
Crystal Lambert, Deputy Finance Director of the City of Providence. Sarah Sawyer, Finance Director. Maria Manzullo, City Collector. Deputy City Collector.
John Moody, continuing city employee.
James Pasquatelli, City Assessor.
Michael Murphy, Deputy City Assessor.
Dr. Lee, City School Controller.
Corey Martone, Deputy City Controller.
Before you start, I would like to recognize our new counselors who just joined us tonight, not new counselors, but they've been newly joined us this evening. Counselor Harris and Counselor Espinal. All right. did I
So
miss
noted.
anyone?
You will.
Madam Chair, I have to recuse myself. I have a meeting.
Yes, we are ready.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to start with just an overview to give you a sense of the administration's approach to this budget. And then we'll turn it over to the finance team to take you through the presentation. So I want to start by thanking Chair Anthony, the members of the committee, and the other members of the council for being here tonight. And I think it's really important that we start this conversation by framing what we're discussing through this budget process as a part of a broader picture of the city budget. So I like to think of the city budget that we're going to work through over the next weeks and months as part of three big pieces. So we have the general revenue operating budget, which is what we're going to get into tonight. But I also want to draw your attention to the fact that this administration also introduced a capital improvement plan, right? That's where we put out a 5-year plan to fund things like sidewalks and streets and parks, what I like to call all the fun stuff. And that's where we borrow and bond for money that we would spend and jointly program over the next 5 years. So you may be looking for things in the budget that you would want to fund that would be appropriate for a capital improvement, and that would be contained in that plan. The third piece that I want to remind you of is that we've talked about the fact that we're going to jointly need to review how the ARPA money has been spent and make some decisions together about where we might want to reallocate money that was programmed previously. And so there may be conversations that we have in the context of this budget where we may decide that those those expenses would be more appropriate for ARPA. We're going to want to look at all these three pieces together because this is a tough budget from a expense perspective. And so we're going to want to use all of the available funding strategically. And we'll be back before you on those other two topics to be sure that you all have a full view of that. So for the purpose of tonight, we're talking about our operating budget, which is proposed at a total of nearly $586 million, right? This is a 3.08% increase in expenses. And we're proposing funding this by rebalancing our tax structure and moving away from reliance on federal funding. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail of how we see the revenue and expense proposals, and the team can take you even further into the weeds. But I just wanted to start with a framing of some big and important components. So one, we have budgeted for about $37.5 million from the state for the state pilot program. That is what is budgeted in the governor's budget, and we are hopeful that that will pass as is budgeted. We have a placeholder for $7.1 million in local pilots. This is simply a placeholder that was budgeted based on last year's budget. Last year, the previous administration budgeted $7.1 million. As you all know, we're currently in negotiations with the higher ed institutions. And so absent the completion of those negotiations, we simply carried over the 7.1 that was budgeted last year as a placeholder in this year. But obviously that could change. You'll note that we've budgeted $11 million in ARPA revenue recovery. So that's a reduction from last year where we used $6.5 million. And this will be the last year that we have ARPA money available. I think it's also important to note that about 95% of this budget is occupied by what I would just describe as fixed costs, right? So there's $130 million as our MOE to schools. There are salary increases that are contractually obligated, including 2.75% to 1033 members, 4% increase to our fire department. And then in addition to that, we have a placeholder for a 1% increase in our police contract, which is also currently under negotiation. We've had to account for $3 million for a large tax settlement that was resolved this year based on an outstanding tax issue from the previous administration. And finally, we've had to budget nearly $105 million for pension payment. $86 million of that is the city general revenue share, and that number grows by 5% each year. So after you do all that, we have about $27 million left. And that's the budget that we have to cover the cost of all the other costs of running the city, from asphalt to auto parts, horse food, repairs to building and city property, archives, office supplies, fire hose and rescue supplies, cables for communications, sands for parks, pool chemicals, outside council, summer jobs, etc. So when we first sat down to look at how we were going to account for all of these kind of other expenses, as a team, we saw a deficit of more than $30 million. And so we spent hours and hours and hours combing through every department budget line by line to identify, places where we might make cuts and ensure that we were responsibly spending. And we were able to reduce that to nearly 22 million without ARPA and almost $11 million once we added in that one-time fund. So if you hear nothing else from me tonight, I want to be clear that without a tax increase, we have an $11 million deficit that will grow to $22 million next year. And if you look at that against the non-fixed costs, that's trying to cut 11 million out of 27 million. So that was daunting, and we had to look at our tax rates and where we were competitive and where we maybe were not. So as it relates to the tax rate change, for residential, we're proposing a 90-cent increase and a change in the homestead exemption. As for context, Providence has not raised residential taxes since fiscal year 13. As the residential rate stands right now, including the homestead exemption, we offer the 8th lowest tax rate in the state of Rhode Island. And unfortunately, a tax rate this low means that we're not able to keep up to meet the needs of our residents in core services, infrastructure repair, keeping streets clean, filling potholes. And it makes it incredibly difficult to meet the needs of our time when you start to think about things like housing, behavioral health services, education challenges that we might want to fund unique initiatives to help to solve. So this proposal moves us to being the 11th lowest in the state, still the bottom third, which we believe helps to keep us competitive. In the same way, we looked at our competitiveness as it relates to our commercial tax. We saw that that is an area where we are not at all competitive. We have, in fact, the highest commercial tax in the state, and in fact, maybe one of the highest in the nation. So we're proposing a $1.30 decrease, bringing us to $34.10 per $1,000. We're still the highest commercial rate, even after that change in the state, with the next lowest being West Warwick at about $31. A rate this high makes us less competitive to bringing in new business. We also know that this high rate of tax is passed on to tenants, helping to raise rents across our city. And we also know that commercial spaces across our city are vacant. When I look around my neighborhood, all of the ground floor retail is empty, and we have to change that. In fact, our average retail vacancy rate is nearly 12%, which is twice the national average, and our office vacancy rate is 18.5%. So we've got to figure out a way to get more competitive as it relates to those spaces to drive economic growth in the city. Finally, there's no changes to the tangible tax, but we are incredibly supportive of the Senate President's proposal for a tangible tax property exemption of $100,000. We know this would bring a lot of relief to small businesses across Rhode Island, and are grateful for that proposal. So as it relates to spending initiatives, the team is going to take you through in much more detail, so I won't repeat what I know is in their presentation. But I just wanted to say to you all that after 4 months here, we thought hard about the things that you all are calling me about all the time, the things that we know, we hear from our residents about, the places where we feel like we are just not meeting the need of what people need in the city. So this is litter and graffiti removal, sidewalk repair, an improved 311 system. It is all about constituent service and being able to deliver on our promise of being the best run city in America. You won't find shiny objects in this budget. You will see core city service investments. Lastly, I want to make sure you are aware, but I know many of you are aware, but wanted to reiterate that in addition to this budget, we're also pursuing multiple ways to sustainably expand our revenue base. We are at the table with our tax exempt institutions working on a new pilot agreement that hopefully will impact city finances for the next 20 years. We're pursuing legislation that would bring in new taxes from commercial properties owned by nonprofits but used for for-profit operations. And we have a proposal for a portion of the state payroll tax to be passed on to the city when our meds and eds grow, so that money can be reinvested in city services. So I want to tell you all that I am so proud of this budget, without shiny objects, because I really believe that it is a step in the right direction in terms of putting Providence on sound financial ground, and advancing our vision to making sure that Providence is a world-class city. And with that, I will leave it to the Real Act finance experts to take you through the details. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How would you like to handle questions? Would you like to have Chief Mancini present and then we have questions?
I think so, because he has a little more, a little more detail that might answer your
Okay,
questions.
all right, then we can start with you, with just like Chief.
I just had some questions on what she's throwing out there.
Well, let's see if we're clarified with Chief Mancini, and then we'll ask them of both.
Chairman, many members of council. Like Chief also Hawkins, I too have a presentation this evening that mirrors the information she's sharing, but certainly shares it in a little deeper format. And the finance team, including the finance directors, we have worked really doing tirelessly building this budget here to assist with all questions associated with the budget. And anyway, this budget, Madam Chairman, the committee actually stays within the 4% cap required by state law. It does include an additional $100,000 rainy day payment. The total budget, as you heard earlier, is a $585.9 million budget, representing a 3% growth over the fiscal 2023 budget. Healthcare costs have increased by $2.3 million overall, roughly a 2% increase due to increased utilization of health. The general fund will see a small decrease this year due to collectively bargained co-share increases to the workforce. Pension actuarial determined contribution, the so-called ABC, has increased by 4.6 million, roughly 4.6%. This would make the 12th consecutive year that we have funded the city's pension plan. And for that, we're very proud of that motion that we have not missed a year at any dollar limit. On the revenue side, the levy growth is limited to 4% for state statute. As I said earlier, the maximum the city can grow its budget levy is approximately 14 million. $10.7 million increase in real estate taxes representing 4% of that growth, while $3.3 million increase in tangible tax, representing a natural increase in the tangible tax rate. $2.8 million decrease in motor vehicle tax due to the phase out. Of course, there's additional reimbursement from the state of offsetting this decrease. Motor vehicle excise tax, as you all know, was phased out in the fiscal 2023 budget. Our collection rate is set at 94%. For those who are not familiar with that, that's the rate by which we achieve maximum collection. Anything above that ends up being a surplus in collected taxes, but it's considered conservative. It's considered to be based on historical data, and the budget has been fairly well balanced and sustained based on a 94% collection. The collection rate for 2023 also is 94%. And I'm proud to say, Madam Chair, members of the committee, just today, the collector has shared the most recent report as we close out the month of April, and as we move into the final 2 months of the fourth quarter, along with anticipated revenues, and we have already achieved our 100% collection of the current tax. So taxes in the city are stable, and they do provide roughly 70% of the operating revenue to balance any budget, including the current year. As I take you through this here, the residential tax rate has been proposed at $18.70 per thousand, with a homestead exemption now at 40%. That represents a tax rate change of 90 cents per thousand, or 5%. The homestead exemption will decrease by 5%. Median owner occupied property would see an annual increase of $404. Median non-owner occupied property would see an increase of $254. For those of you who are wondering, why would that increase be smaller for non-owner occupied? It's simply because they do not enjoy the homestead exemption to begin with. So their change in tax increase is predicated solely on the change in tax rate. And that's why there's a difference. On the commercial tax rate is now being proposed at $34.10. It's a tax rate decrease of $1.30, or 3.7%. The average savings to apartment buildings is $1,905. For some 9 years, the various administrations have frozen and have pledged to freeze the commercial tax rate and not raise it as an inducement and incentive to retain those businesses and commercial properties in the city, or to attract new ones. We are highly confident that reducing the tax rate will further pursue that, and I think it's a wise move on behalf of the city. The tangible tax rate, as we said earlier, there'll be no change in that, and yes, we do support proposed legislation of General Assembly that would exempt any business at 100,000 below. Providence is a leader in that. Providence is one of 3 communities in Rhode Island that have their own proposed and independent tax exemption for any small business whose tangible tax is below $10,000. There is no taxation to that business. We did that more than 3 years ago during the COVID experience. State and federal revenues. State aid, as you heard Chief Hawkins say earlier, is predicated predominantly on the proposed budget as presented by Governor McKee. That includes $37.5 million in pilot funding, $7.1 million in distress city funding, and all other state aid is based on the governor's recommended 2024 budget. In terms of federal aid, $18.3 million in transfer from the American Recovery Project Act Fund. 11 million of that is in lost or reduced revenues. 7.3 million is in what's known as urgent capital expenditure. Pilots, local, so-called college, universities, and hospitals. You heard Chief Hawkins indicate that it has been level funded at the 2023 amount. While we are in current negotiations, and there's no telling when those negotiations will be completed and how they will be completed, the responsible thing to do is to set the budget at the current base of those agreements, 7.1 million. Last year, we did the same thing, knowing that there could be a $3.2 million deficit that we would not collect if we do not collect on it before the end of this fiscal year, June 30, 2023. Our council saw fit to have included in the appropriation ordinance a provision that said, should we not collect it for whatever reason, with a continuing negotiation or outright non-collection, that we would make up that deficit through attrition. We propose to the council, once again, that if that difference is not made up by the time this budget is adopted, and before the end of June 30, 2024, we once again will look for cost savings through attrition and other means within the budget. But the responsible thing to do is to at least level the budget at the current amount, given that we are in negotiations. You'll hear that from me similarly about police contractors. Departmental fees. Departmental fees for services are budgeted based on current trend and projected activity. As we move to expenditures, the personnel overview. Full-time equivalents excluding police and fire for 2023 were 1,277 FTE with full-time equivalent employees. For 2024, it represents a full-time equivalent of 1,292, a 15% increase or 1.17%. Full-time equivalents, including police and fire, so exclusively police and fire, in 2023, they were 859. In 2024, they'll rise to 883, a net increase of 24, and this will be net of attrition, net of retirements, net of academies, and net of hiring. As to salaries, excluding police and fire, 52.5 million was the 2023 amount, 55.7 million is the 2024 amount. That's an increase of 3.1 million. And may I remind the council that that includes a 2.75 increase for the non-public safety workforce. Total salaries associated with police and fire. In 2023, there was 64.7 million. They rise to 69.8 million, an increase of 5.4 million in 2024, or 7.7% increase. I remind the committee that that includes the third year of a 5-year contract for fire at 4%. And as to police, that contract will expire on June 30th of this year, and we are underway with discussions and the start of engagement of negotiations, and expect that over the next 60 days, we will endeavor to complete those contract negotiations in this fiscal year. The salary increases are as follows. Labor's Local 1033, a 2.75% increase. This is the second year of the 33-year contract. 2025 will be the final year. International Association of Firefighters, this increase this year is 4%. And likewise, the police FOP, should we not be able to complete the contract negotiations before June 30th, 2023 for the adoption of this budget, we have respectfully placed a 1% placeholder. This is meant to be, Madam Chairman, to the committee, out of respect to the workforce, that we would not put 0, and by the same token, no, we put any more greater than 1%, as we are and will be in active negotiations. So it's a budget technique that has been well designed, and it's meant to put a placeholder in the budget so that there is some amount that we have set aside. Non-union employees have been budgeted for a 2.7% increase cost of living. The total attrition this year for savings in the budget, for those savings that could occur from the non-filling of positions or other means, total of $3 million in the budget for. With respect to expenditures and programmatic highlights. In the areas that involve improving supports to children and families, the following items have been included in the budget. And some of these items, if not most of them, have been included in prior years as well. $580,000 for summer learning opportunities, $385,000 for Providence after school lines to provide after and out of school work, $150,000 in investments in recreation centers and pools, $250,000 for youth employment, $250,000 for Amos houses and handout program, and $130,046,000 appropriation for the Providence Public School District under the maintenance of effort. Building a safer city, $100,000 for noise ordinance enforcement, $1.9 million for new police academy and 40 new police officers, $3.9 million for 2 lateral fire academies, $50,000 savings in telecommunications to establish a more sustainable employee model and reduce quality. Providing high quality services in every neighborhood. These programs will include the following: $100,000 for new PDD 311 software to provide easier reporting, tracking, and resolution. $300,000 in investments to provide improved trash and litter removal. $220,000 to address graffiti and maintenance support. $193,000 for sidewalk improvement repairs, and finally, $175,000 in investment in downtown parks. And under the mayor's brand of running the best city in America, $25,000 for translation services for all public procurements, $65,000 to housing support coordinator, $79,000 for an energy and resilience initiatives administrator to increase our renewable energy sources and resources, and $100,000 to enforce state law compliance across the city. These are the highlights of the budget as it was presented to you last week. Chair, members of the committee, members of the council, stand ready to answer your questions and provide you greater detail. Once again, Madam Chair, all of our division affiliates present this evening, their budgets are before you, and we're prepared to discuss those with finance.
Well, I appreciate that. Before we go, we have many questions for you. I've already told. So before we go on to the individual departments that we've asked to come tonight to talk about their budgets, we're going to start with Councilor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. How much of a loss is it? Total loss by reducing the commercial tax by the $1.30. I know you kind of gave me the cent here, but what is the money?
About $5 million.
$5 million? All right, and then what is, I guess I'm gonna split this 3 ways. What's the gain for the 4% max and the homestead reducing it? Like, what's the total taxes that we'll collect if we decide to go the 4% max, reducing the homestead?
4% max on the, as an increase to the current levy would generate at max $14 million.
Okay, and then how much with the 5% reduction? Oh, that's the total.
Well, the 5% is the,
5% reduction in the homestead. Oh, that's gonna add too. Is that included in that 14 million?
that is,
Okay, so how much if we break it out?
what's the assessment of that, but,
Like if we just did the 4%, how much is it?
4% brings us to 14 million. Yeah, and we consider that there was a reduction due to the commercial reduction of approximately 5, that brings that number down to 9. To bring it back up to the cap was the difference in the rate and the exemption.
You lost me there.
Yeah, can you say that?
So the 4% is 9 million?
The 4% over this year's levy.
Like if we just sit here, and we decide, okay, we're gonna do a 4% raise, is that 9 million?
$14 million change in levy.
Okay, but then we also have the minus the 5% in homestead.
That's correct.
What's that equal?
Oh, so I can't see it. The residential increase that's proposed brings in a $17 million increase to the levy, and the commercial proposed reduction brings $5.6 million out of the levy, so that net it brings it to the 14.
Okay. So the 4% max and the minus 5% is 17 million.
Well, you have to say it another way. Under any condition, no matter what you change, rate, homestead, the maximum amount that you can increase this year's budget of the consideration. The 4% on the prior approved levy, the maximum amount you could bring in is 14 million. To get to that 14 million, we require 2 combinations. A change in the homestead, increase that levy, a reduction to commercial tax by rate to lower that levy, the net sum of all those components brought us back to 14 million. Mr. Leary just read it to you. Could you read that again to the record, please?
The proposed changes to the residential tax rates brings in an additional $17 million to the levy. And the proposed changes to the commercial rate reduces that levy by 5.6 million.
What was that figure then?
5.6 reduction in commercial and 17 million increase for residential. And then we budget 94% of that, which gives you the 14 million increase that you see in the budget.
Joe, can I ask a question there?
Sorry, yes, I'm gonna, just for clarification, I'm just gonna ask.
Just for clarification, they're not counting the tangible, which counts towards that 14 million.
That's correct.
Okay,
So that's.
Which there was
what's
no
missing.
change, there was no change in rate, but there was a natural change in the occurrence of the tangible revenue. 3 million.
Okay, go ahead, Counselor Engelbart, I'm sorry, Counselor Taylor, may I?
it's just a follow-up on first.
Okay.
So if it's increasing by 17 million to do this whole thing, if we only did pieces of it, so it's both the tax rate increase to 90 cents, which is 5%, and a decrease of the homestead exemption, how, like, what if we just did one or the other? Do you have
I
details?
don't have that figure handy, but I can.
That would be great if you could follow up with that. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Counselor Taylor, you want to go back?
Sure.
to-
So we're including the 7.1 million, even though we don't know it's there for the pilot, for the
That is correct.
universities. What is the value of all the vacant positions now? Do you have that?
I don't have that with me, but we can get that. We have vacancies, but
What's the value of all non-contractual increases? Like the non-union? We have that.
About $500,000.
Then on, please, the school funding level, you said you're making it, level funded at the 130. I guess my question is, why is that after the city had to pay a result on the lawsuit?
under state law, general law, whatever the level of funding you reach at, which is under traditional maintenance of effort, that's the number that we have to minimum every year going forward. Fund, you may be referring to the application of the Crowley Act. There was a resolution of that applied to years 2021, sorry, 2021, 21, 22, 23.
I guess that's it for now.
Counselor Sanchez.
Just a quick follow-up, thank you, Chairwoman, from Majority Leader, regarding the local pilot agreements. So you can't provide any other information on where we're at in those negotiations?
Unfortunately, I'm really bound to tell the committee that we're under a non-disclosure agreement. We are in the midst of those negotiations. We have already met on 4 occasions. We're going to be meeting, continue right into the month of May and June. There is progress in the groundwork of those negotiations, but I'm not at liberty to discuss them at any point for fear that I may disturb the goodwill of this negotiation.
Thank you. So just going back to your point earlier, so what happens in 2 months if we get 2 million instead of 7 million? What protections do we have in the budget? Like,
So the number that we would be shy for the 2023 year would be 3.2 million. We have already made a provision through what's known as attrition, savings and salaries and other areas of the budget to make up that deficit. So for 2023, we would finish the year. I'm confident that we'll finish the year with a balanced budget. For 2024, should the council approve the budget with that $7.1 million placeholder, like this year, we would have the 12 ensuing months of the budget year before the budget came to a close at June 30 of 2024. To hopefully successfully complete the negotiations to bring in a new pilot agreement, which again, I'm confident that can happen.
So we're gonna make up the difference through attrition again.
Attrition or other cost saving. Attrition on salaries, but for the saving.
I'm sorry, Counselor Sanchez.
no, thank you. I mean, it's a little I'm not gonna say like confusing, but like, we're just kind of going for the ride, see where we're at.
No, I think we're dealing in a responsible fashion. The institutions that we're dealing with, as you heard Ms. Hawkins say, they're world-class organizations who aspire to stay in a world-class city. The negotiations only got underway in the month of February, preliminary discussion. Here we are at May 1st. We're already 4 meetings in. there are substantive negotiations and discussions. I wish I could review them in a public setting, but they will disturb these negotiations. I'm highly confident that if we do not achieve that accomplishment before this fiscal year is over, well into the new year, new fiscal year, we will have a.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that, Kurt?
Go ahead.
Yes, Chief. So, if, say we have surplus, so say it's more than 7.1, do you have, what happens with the surplus if we end up?
So for the past 2 years, we could not generate a surplus given the fact that we were recipients of American Recovery Plan funds. We had to stay in a balance. But if we're fortunate to have a surplus, then that would be part of attrition and cost savings that would help us not have to meet that 7.1 million shortfall if an agreement was not in place by the end of next June, June 30th, 2024. Not to be conflated or confused with this year, a similar provision is made in the budget appropriation that we were seeking $3.2 million makeup funds that had expired last year. And so we thought we might have an opportunity to complete those negotiations starting from last July. The previous administration did not enter the negotiations. I should say that the institutions chose not to enter the negotiations until the new administration was seated. Having said that, there was no other opportunity but to begin in January, and we did from the very beginning to entertain those discussions, even in an attempt to try to complete them before this June 30. That may in fact even have a reflection on the 3.2 million that we have assigned as an attrition matter if we do not receive those funds. So likewise, for the 2024 budget, we are continuing with the same path and the same strategy. We are asking that we include there at minimum the 7.1 million that would be expected had the agreements not expired and had they continued through this year.
Thank you. And I just want to follow a question on the pilots. Refers to the EDS, a lot of, but no mention of the Mets. We are negotiating pilots with the Mets.
We are negotiating currently with colleges and universities. We will have separate undertaking with the Mets. We are already under a signed agreement that runs the rest of this year and next year with New England, and we hope to pursue a similar agreement with us.
Okay, so that is through the end of next year, you're saying.
The New England goes to the end of next year, and then we will hopefully have the opportunity to
What
negotiate.
about the other Mets?
They never had a signed agreement. It was always long.
No, thank you. All right, and you haven't started negotiations with the Mets.
We wanted to put this to, it's best put forward on the college, and then we will continue our efforts to get to the hospitals.
Okay, thank you.
So,
So we have some work ready. Go ahead.
Okay, is it
Counselor Engelbach?
okay to ask a few questions or?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you for this presentation. I can only imagine the amount of work that went into this.
okay.
And I do have a few questions, in a spreadsheet. How positive are we, and so apologies if these are a little, because they're anyway, out of order, but how confident are we in the 37.5 million in McKee's budget, given that there's still a lot of negotiations going on with McKee's budget? And I understand there's gonna be a lot of changes to that. Do we have any, like,
So it's a good question as we start our hearings on May 1, when the budget was constructed and before it was presented by the mayor on April 25th. We then, and to this day, have confidence that the mayor's budget, and the governor's budget as proposed, will hold, particularly to high distress crews like the city of Providence. Pilot reimbursement under the state formula is highly dependent upon, and we expect that.
okay. And then another question I had, we've talked a bit about the attrition projections. How have those assumed savings in past years? Like, how have we done on those kinds of projections for past years? Are we generally pretty
The
on
finance
target?
directors
Or?
could answer that, I'm sure, certainly, but
Yes, we've always achieved our attrition budget and often beyond the attrition budget, which is
Okay.
often helped with public safety overtime and other stuff. So, we've never not, in my time here, not achieved the attrition.
And then, sorry, I have a few more. Well, I'm not sorry, this is literally my job. So Director Hawkins presented, and it's in here, that we're trying to decrease our reliance on federal funding. Do we have someone on staff who's looking into like the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure and Jobs Act at the federal level that could be bringing substantial amounts of money into the city? And is that built into this at all, or how will that be implemented in the future?
it is not built into the budget, but we are well aware of both of those programs, and we are that daily, regularly, weekly, we delve into that. There are a number of occasions that folks who have advised the city previously write to us with ideas that we could utilize. And so yes, we are.
Is there like a point person on staff who's digging into those? Because
It would be the three of us on a regular basis, but if it required a special assignment, one of the three of us would do the research and would be knowledgeable.
Okay.
We also have a job posting out there right now for a grant manager in the mayor's office, and so we're expecting that position can help apply and achieve some of these grants.
Okay, because it strikes me there's a lot of funding there for a lot of the things that Director Hawkins was mentioning around infrastructure and also green infrastructure. And I just want to make sure we don't lose those opportunities because it's kind of unprecedented amounts of money. And then more like granular, like why 193 for sidewalks and 220 for graffiti? Like what, how did that calculus happen? Just knowing the, at least in my word, the quantity of sidewalks that really could use some loving.
That's the cost of the staffing we need to do.
Oh, that's the
So it's-
staffing.
yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
That's not the actual science, okay. And then I guess just like a larger question of, you know, if we do have a deficit of $30 million, you know, why is 17 million of that being put on residential residents of the city as opposed to, and then decreasing 5.6 for commercial, like without any sort of, I guess my concern, which I'll just say is that I know the mayor in his speech said that should be passed on to the tenants of those properties, but there's nothing in the budget that's requiring any sort of that. And I know I've talked personally to a number of landlords who have described that as our costs have gone up. We expect that to cover our own costs. And so there wasn't necessarily an expectation that they're going to pass that on to their residents or to their leasees if it's a commercial property. Is there the goal of building any of that in? And I guess my second question, so I'll just ask them all at once, like why pair the residential increase with also or decreasing the homestead exemption? Like, wouldn't we want to incentivize people who live in the city and like own the buildings to be here because they might be caring more about those buildings? It seems to incentivize like more absentee landlords, which at least in my community, those are the properties that are the least well cared for.
That's a multi-part.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions. I just figured I'd answer all of the rest of my questions.
I'll do my best to unpack that, but let's start with the homestead. The homestead, well, it's intended to provide that relief, certainly to owner-occupied properties. Bring us back a year, it was 40%, and in the year of rebound, rising prices that were throughout the city. The additional increase in that homestead was designed to perhaps provide that relief. Promise one of the few communities who chose not to implement, communities around the legislation chose not to do so. I think today they regret that because things have not changed in that world of real estate values. But fortunately, the city saw fit to do that. I don't know if we can sustain a 45% homestead exemption. That's one reason why I say that. So it's not something that was shown into the city ordinances for a long time. It was a 1-year provision. As to commercial savings, there was a pledge to 3 administrations that we would at least hold the line on commercial because it is one of the, it's the highest in the revenue. And as a means to incentivize those businesses that are already here or commercial property owners, whether it's a commercial business or a profit complex, and stay in the city or to attract new business. The only way that you can lower residential rates is to attract the commercial industry. You have to bring in commercial industry to help spread that burden amongst the non-residential owners. So the mayor and administration had reviewed this, felt it was not only appropriate to visit that again and lower those rates as an incentive and hopefully have them stay. In addition to commercial property owners, there are a number of commercial properties that they see also tenants because of COVID. They need to be, in order to keep them here in the city. It's important to know that. So I think it's a commitment to the business community, and I hope and I trust that they will see fit that any savings that would occur, particularly in the area of commercial apartments, would either be passed on to those tenants or minimally would be used to offset any planned increase that would have otherwise taken place without that saving. But you're right, there's nothing that we had introduced as an ordinance that could enforce that, but we would hope that good business sense that would do so.
Thank you. I can stop you now.
Councilor Taylor.
So just to follow up on that, I know when it was mentioned that I don't see that happening. It's just a comment. I don't see any landlord out there going, oh geez, you know what? I'm saving $1.30 per 1,000 or whatever it is, and I'm gonna pass that on. That's not gonna happen. Couple other questions. The police department, you have 1.9 million for the new police academy. When is that gonna start?
October is when it's projected.
October. And then, on the fire one, it says 3.9 million for 2 lateral fire academies. I know the mayor said that 1 fire academy was canceled. So is that actually 1 now or 2?
No, it's still 2. So there are currently recruiting for laterals at this moment that are intended to start on July 1st. So it includes funding for those folks. And then they're planning on doing another round of recruitment in the spring of next year for that second academy in July of 2024.
So really, we should only be putting it for 1. The
Well-
question I have, 3.9 million, I think is very inflated, especially when we're doing lateral transfers, because we're asking people from North Providence or Cranston or whatever. Some people might have 20-some years on, and they're gonna come to this fire department. They don't need as much training as someone who knows, like, go grab a hose, or they're grabbing God knows. They know, they've been in the job for 20 years or so they would know. So I feel that is inflated, because they're not gonna need the full 6 months training. Some of them are gonna come in with the EMT already, some are gonna come in with the EMTC already. Some might even have paramedic, so they're gonna be trained on that. I would also look to knock that back to 1 and worry about the next one next time, because I heard there was gonna be two laterals. There was gonna be a lateral, and then it was going back to the regular, because when we do laterals, to be honest, it's gonna be probably 100% white people that'll be coming from North Providence and Cranston or whatever. So, huh?
That's a good question.
I'm just being honest.
Can I build on that?
And also, huh?
Can I build on that?
Yeah, hold on a second. I got one last thing. And what is, jumping off, what's the average, because I figured out what my taxes will go up all different ways. But what is the average house in Providence? There has to be an average somewhere. So what is the average? I know 3 deck is more than 1, the east side is more expensive. What's that? That's what I'm looking for, the median value, thank you.
And what's the high and low?
Yeah, or like the high and low as well.
Yeah.
The average value is around 380,000.
Okay, so my house is at, I'm just gonna throw this out there, 325,000. But if I was to go with what you're proposing with the 5% and the 4%, it's gonna cost me an extra $464 a year. If we would do the 45%, I mean, if the homestead is staying the way it is, it's 161. Going in the middle, 43% would be 282, and 42.5% would be 312. If I understand we need money, what? Huh? No, it took me a while to figure out. I wrote it down, believe me. So, what I'm saying is, I'm working, I have a job. There's people out there, elderly people that are relying on Social Security, on their husband or wife's minimal pension. And I think to ask somebody, like 380 is saying even, mine's 325, so 464. So 380 is gonna be over $500. So we're gonna ask the people, I know my phone, and probably the council people here, phone has been blowing up,
Yeah.
elderly people panicked that, you know, oh, I can't afford this and da, 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 you know. And I tell them, wait, we haven't, you know, we're in the beginning of the stage, you know, we don't know, I don't know what it's gonna be. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that $500 or more is very expensive to ask for someone who is, and also last time, I promise. You say that the taxes haven't gone up since 2013, which is correct. But the reevaluations have.
Yeah.
So when the reevaluations go up, my taxes go up. So I know the previous mayor, we didn't see eye to eye, but he always quoted, said, oh, the taxes didn't go up, and that's a false, because my valuations went up at least twice in the last 10 years. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Espinal, then I'll get to have you, Councilor.
I had a number of questions, but some of those were already asked by the government leader. So let me just expand on the $2.9 million being set aside for the lateral police fire department. Do we have a method in place that we're thinking of that is going to ensure
minority participation. So you're not drawing any application changes, you're basically just going out and hire people that are already firefighters, different cities and towns, and bringing them in. So what will assure the people of Providence that the diversification of the fire department will continue, and the minorities are gonna ensure participation in this academy?
So I don't know all of the intricacies of how the fire department is doing that, but the public safety will be in it, believe next week to go through their budget and certainly can answer.
Thank you. And then just my last question. I believe Director Hawkins stated that if we do not raise the 4%, we'll have an $11 million deficit. Right? But with the 4% that we're raising, we'll bring it in $14 million. So the difference of $3 million. Am I correct?
So some of that 14 million is made up of natural growth from the tangible tax that rose 3%. So the true change from the proposed rate changes and to the levy is 11 million. We did see some natural growth in our tangible tax of 3 million that brings us to the $14 million cap.
So there is a need for 11, 14 will come in.
No, the 14, we had always relied on that natural growth and tangible, because it was a given, it was actual experience, actual growth in that.
I'm just looking for some kind of way to reduce this increase, because that a majority of stated people are on fixed income. It doesn't sound like a lot of additional $400, but that's just over $40 a month. And someone that's retired that has a fixed income and Social Security, that's a lot of money. So, because you have to come up with that. And then you can't come up with that money and you can't pay your taxes. Then they get that letter from us saying that we're gonna take their home, we're gonna put out for tax hit. And we know what can happen with that. So I understand the need to bring the extra money in. We have to balance the budget, but we have to be careful with for the taxpayers, for the residents. They also have many needs, so we gotta be creative, and we'll continue to work hard to make we do that. Thank you.
All right, can I just reach Councilor Vargas, who's been waiting? Thank you, Madam Chair.
So one thing, one back to the nonprofits. Out of the $71 million that we have, no, not 71, 7.1 million that we have. If they work with us on the new proposal that we have on commercial spaces that we use to collect more taxes, that would be a surplus in top of the 7.1.
Yes. It would be some, it would be additional revenue in addition to any signed memorandum of agreement that we have. Yes.
And what news do we have about these new things that we're trying to do? And are they happy to work with us, or they?
They attended General Assembly sessions in both the House and the Senate, gave testimony on behalf of all colleges and universities that they support the major legislation, which is now making its way to approval. And how to quantify also what that will bring in, when based on the commercial tax rate multiplied by whatever new value that we were able to identify, that would be the new revenue that we would see in addition to any agreement that we enter.
How we won't be able to see that before we close the budget.
So I think that even if the legislation was to be approved by the General Assembly before we adopt our budget, we would still have to determine the best way that the city assessors office could put together the best way to go out and identify which properties may or may not in fact have commercial application other than a voluntary reporting of Howard University.
Wait, go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Norman. Third question, and 0.90 cents that he wants to open residential minus 5% of the homestead would be a total of 99 cents.
I don't think I did the math that way. We've heard the numbers discussed that the average increase to the owner occupied would be 454, the non-owner occupied 254. It's about $150 difference average. less if you're a non-owner because they never enjoyed the benefit of the homestead exemption.
Okay, questions?
That's what else.
Oh, I'm
actually,
sorry, Councilor
Oh, go ahead,
Sanchez,
go
and
ahead.
then Councilor.
Yeah, sorry to beat around the, or to keep going, time about the fire department, but I see there's a number of officers attached to the police academy. Is there a number that's attached to the fire lateral?
I believe there's 40 coming on this year and estimated 65 for the spring recruitment.
Councilor Taylor.
So I want to make a comment here because I'm not a grizzled veteran, but I just want my second term yet. And I think it's from what I'm hearing from the people and also from fellow colleagues, they're asking us, I've been here for my second term, Councilor Anthony second term, but other people are brand new. And you're asking them 5 months into their position to say, hey, we're gonna raise the taxes this time. And then, I just hope that the mayor and then the administration can understand, and I know they understand because they're new, but it's just, I don't think it's right to ask, for the newer people to ask, but to win and ask. I'm saying this just in case we don't come to an agreement on the 45% and the 4%, or even the $1.30 less. I just think it's tough for these new council people to say, I mean, they're learning on the job here. And it's kind of like, yeah, we need this to pass. So as many phone calls as I'm getting, they're getting as well. And I don't know if they were prepared for that in 5 months. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to feel bad for the new council.
Trying to feel bad.
I'm trying to feel bad. I feel bad.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank my colleague for sharing that. And I'll go a step further, like on the record, like I'm probably 99% positive that I cannot support a budget that increases the residential tax rate and decreases it in the same year. I think at some point, we need to get together and develop a plan for the next 2-3 years going forward. I understand our revenue is not increasing, our expenditures are increasing, so we have to find the money somewhere. But doing both of those at the same time, the same year, I don't think I can support it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
call
please.
Councilor Peterson?
Sure, I have a question with regards to the pilot conversations that you're having. My question is in regards to council participation and input on those conversations. There's many of us here in council that are directly affected by the properties and the amount of space and land and everything in our wards. And I'm just wondering when and if we're going to be giving our input on the things that we need in our own respective communities.
Well said. I would have to respectfully defer to the solicitor to give us guidance on that, given that we are in the discussion. Yes, we certainly should include some input from those councils, those boards, who probably felt we're not at a level that value to be yet decided. So I think when it's appropriate, it will clearly include.
There's been a lot of, I'll just reiterate, there has been, we're hoping what doesn't happen is that we just are presented with this settlement, some opportunity as council.
Any agreement, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the council, would require council approval. I believe the administration would be wise enough to understand that it should have the council buy-in before there was even an agreement. Give you that.
Okay. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And I just wanted to highlight and agree with what Councilor Sanchez and Taylor said. When I talked to my neighbors a lot over the last couple of years, the number one thing that they brought up to me was how hard the reval was for them and their bottom line. And we're already seeing people, even pre the reval, getting priced out of their homes. So to be hit with the reval and then also be hit with increases while we're seeing the commercial rate go down is just, I know I've already received like countless calls and emails over the weekend from folks saying this is devastating. And also they assumed like it was us that was doing it, and I was like, hold up, like the process is just beginning. But that's not something I was defending with them. It was something I was clear was the mayor's idea and not our idea. And so just to be sure, like, that is not something that I support, and that's something that, like, I know my residents could not swallow.
And if I may, Madam Chair, with due respect to everybody in this council, to the leader's point, the budget wasn't predicated on the tenure and service of any council member. It was based on the need to balance the budget. So with due respect, I understand the sensitivity of that issue. I just want to be clear that it had nothing to do with anyone's tenure in the council.
Thank you. Yes, I'm gonna have Councilor Vargas.
Thank you. Going back into the commercial rate, you want to go down $1.20. Everyone has a lease already. According to the new regulation last year. So everyone got locked into a lease. I don't see that any commercial tenant who has a lease will be able to go down and lease or go down the price. Because we don't have the power to tell the property owner, you have to lower the rent in this particular business because the mayor gives you a break on the $1.30 per thousand. I don't see that it's going to be working, that idea. It has to be a different approach, how we can help the commercial and the residential at the same time.
Chief Nancy, may I just ask, the fixed cost, what is the total for that, the legal obligations that we have?
Well, I've often said in prior years of testimony, the finance director and deputy have done a deeper analysis, but Madam Chair, members of the council, it behooves you to know that 92% of the city budget in any year that I can attest to is fixed by the degree of contractual obligation, employee costs, benefits, pension, debt service, school appropriation, et cetera, and even that difference, which is now greater, but to cite that model, even the 8% that's not specifically fixed, even within that area, it includes supplies, services that are absolutely essential in the city. I think Ms. Sylvia can give you a better handle on that.
Right, so the latest calculation that I did that include salaries, debt service, medical budget, debt utilities, garbage and recycling. I get down to about 95.5% of the budget is fixed or contractual. And that remaining 26.5 million is like buying asphalt and cement and sand for our playgrounds and, tax forms and, payroll advices and.
So that 95% is what figure?
559 million.
Okay, so that's, okay. So those are fixed costs.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
So the 26 million, but when you think like that is how all of our, our recreation, the services and supplies that they need to run.
That we're contractually obligated to pay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Before we haven't even gotten to the departments, so I know this was important that everyone be able to speak. I appreciate you answering all the questions and move on to the departments. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, please, Madam Auditor.
Couple clarifications. I do want to let the committee know that residential non-AWOL properties, the tax levy increased 10% while their assessed values increased 0.62%. The commercial, the levy decreased 4.17% and their value, assessed value decreased 0.58%. So that is non-AWOL and that doesn't include tangible. While I disagree with the prudence of level funding a pilot, I think that you're putting the council at a disadvantage with an unfunded budget to begin. That's $3.2 million that has to be found that you're relying on. We're hoping we're doing well, but we can't tell you anything. That's a little tough to take. But you mentioned a settlement, a $3 million settlement that we had to pay that was unexpected. Did that ever go before the Claims and Pending Suit Committee?
So that's that. I think it was a tax, I think it's a tax settlement. I think tax settlements are.
According to the charter, they have to go quarterly, and they have to be reported to council. They still have to prove it. Council pays the taxes. No, that's number one. Number two is, don't we have a legal approval to cover that expense?
Taxes are made up through the 6% of the levy that's not budgeted. We don't settle taxes for cash, taxes are settled for credits.
Can we have profit interest? What do we, how are we doing with that, and where is that going to result?
That is budgeted in the non-departmental general fund. Revenue, and that's just turning interest credits on our bank account while the money is sitting at home before it's spent.
So it's identified and budgeted?
Yes.
We have the medical fund. Can you tell me how much is in that medical fund?
We have about 25 million in the fund balance in medical.
And we mentioned the capital improvement thing. What is our borrowing capacity? Do you plan on borrowing more or doing a master lease?
Currently, the city has the ability to borrow upwards of 120 million, in effect, with no new impact to the budget. If it's taken with a premium, that can be used for capitalized interest and make no payment, at least for one fiscal year.
So next year's payment will just add to the 11 million potential deficit that we're already.
If no, it will, if we can borrow the premium will be used in that place in escrow, will be used to pay debt service until other debt service diminishes and comes off the city.
I think that's all I have. All right. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the department. Thank you so much. So I think the first one we have is the tax collector.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for your benefit, standardized process that I think was generally agreed upon is that County Director Silverian, Deputy Director Lindbergh have prepared summaries of each division's budget as a narrative along with their organizational charts, mission statement, and so-called free box report. When the narrative is read into the record, that basically summarizes the free box report. If there are specific questions or details, or you turn over or members of the committee or council wish to ask, where you can.
I appreciate that. Maybe I do, because I think that that would probably be, having the summary read into the record is probably the best way to do it.
Yep.
And then any kind of highlights, that you have will be included, I'm assuming in the summary. But I also just, I think for the education of our new council people, is the three box summaries is something that we can just explain briefly maybe with the first department so that people understand how we prepare the materials that we have to look at. So I'll let you start however you go.
Thank you.
Please, welcome.
And we do have a substitution going on. It is an updated org chart for this department.
We need to replace what's on the back. We need to make a motion.
Okay. We have a motion to substitute the city collector organizational chart for what is started and what is. Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
So this is the first department that we're gonna go through with a lot of committee members. I'll just kind of go through what's in your packet right here. The first page is just a brief sort of departmental summary that finance will read into the record. You then should have a legal size sheet of paper. We call it a three box report. This report is the department's budget. The first section that you'll see is the current budget, 23 versus the proposed 24 budget. There's a middle section in that three box report that compares the 23 budget versus the projected 23 budget. And the final section is the proposed 24 budget versus the projected fiscal 23 budget. So there's three ways to look at how the proposed budget is versus the proposed, the adopted current year budget and the proposed budget versus the projected budget for the current year. You'll also see a departmental summary that the department has prepared, kind of just telling you a little bit about the department, what they do, what their goals are, their description, and mission statement. And finally, their organizational chart. So I'm going to read through the departmental summary. If you'd like to follow along with the 3 bucks, the departmental review that I'm going through is going to take it by section. So we'll talk about salaries, benefits, services, and supplies as they're presented to you in the 3 bucks. And that's also on page 25 of your budget book, if you do have your budget book handy. If you'd like to follow along.
Madam Chair, did you want to add that as an exhibit?
Yes, please. It should be exhibit number 3.
3.
And that is the summary. We already did the org chart.
We substituted the org chart, but yes, so
Yes,
we
for the
have this.
packet for the city collector, yes, please.
So exhibit 3.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Okay, city collector, this is a revenue generating department. Revenue is budgeted for $646,661 in the projected 24 budget. This is a decrease of $49,347 from the 23 budget. And the revenue represents fees collected for the annual tax sale and from municipal lien certificates. Moving on to expenditures. Salaries, the total salaries for fiscal 24 is a proposed $866,234. This is an increase of $55,946 over the 23 budget. The department has not requested any organizational changes. The increase in salary is due to contractual 1033 cost of living adjustment of 2.75% and step increases. And additionally, this year, the finance office has removed attrition from the departmental salary line and has budgeted it as its own line item and non-departmental. So you'll see some of that increase to salaries isn't due to cost of living or to step increases. It's just because we eliminated attrition from that departmental budget. Total benefits. Benefits is not the purview of this individual department. They're calculated by finance, it's FICA, it's medical, pension, and so they're not responsible for those budgets, but finance prepared them. Benefits for 24 is $660,735, a decrease of $4,991. Moving on to services, total proposed budget for services is $826,006. $121,783 from the 23 budget. And that decrease is driven by printing and postage expenses based on departmental trends and actual expenses. Supplies, total proposed budget for supplies for fiscal 24 is $7,300. This is a decrease of $1,280 from the 23 budget. The department is reducing its office supply line based on departmental trends, and there is no capital expense budget for this department. Here, I'd like to turn it over to the department for any questions you might have on details of their budget.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. So can you just talk about the decrease in the revenue? And it says this represents fees collected for the annual tax sale for municipal lien certificates. I mean, that's the description of the revenue. Why did it decrease?
So that decrease would be cross charge associated with tax sale is based on the number of properties that are offered for tax sale. So if there are fewer properties on the tax sale, then that
And can you just briefly give us an overview of what that process is for a tax sale so that our council members understand that?
Sure. So tax sale is it's an enforcement mechanism that is governed by state law. It's a 90-day process. All notifications are also, all notification deadlines to taxpayers are also governed by state law. It is a 90-day process, and there are notices that are set at the 90-day period, 40-day period. There's a 21-day notice to any interested parties other than owners in the property. There's outreach to Office of Healthy Aging. There's also outreach to Rhode Island Housing to assist taxpayers. They also have a right of first refusal for the Maryland Walker bill. So 10 days prior to tax sale, they will submit a list of any owner-occupied properties that they will exercise their right of first refusal.
And the criteria for placing the property on tax sale again is just non-payment of taxes.
Now, yes, we set the criteria at after the third quarter.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Yes.
The vacant spots, are they gonna be filled? The clerk two and the assistant two collector?
Yes, we are currently interviewing for both.
Right, Councilor Vargas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What are those the results that you get when you send a notice to people? They sign a piece of paper and these come to you?
The 40-day notice is a certified mailing, yes, and they do have to sign for that notice.
What about that notice doesn't come back to you or we can't find the person?
So we actually have title work that is done on the property, so any addresses that that are served to taxpayers come from the title work. So we have a duty to notify at the most current address that we have. They will come back to us, but if we have attempted to notify, then we have fulfilled the requirement for the state law.
Because I went today to look for this particular person. It's going to be only 5 days left for him to lose the project.
That is a tax assignment, that's different from tax sale.
But in the tax sale past a year.
Right.
From now it's coming to this the end. The reason is they couldn't find and get in touch with the property owner. I went to this property. Already new person on there, nobody knows about this. So what would be the next step for the city to try to get in touch with this person?
That process is mandated by state law. So they have a 10-day, if that's a 10-day notice, and we've attempted to notify at the address that is either recorded or that we have on file, then again, we have to fill that requirement according to the law.
So if we want to change the 10 days notice that we have to go to the state and ask for a change?
Or if it's mandated by the state, if that's the process, then
That's
that's
the
not
state
it. Okay, Councilor Peterson.
This is actually a follow-up to Councilman Taylor's question. How long have your positions been vacant?
The assistant collector position just became vacant, I believe, less than 2 months ago. As the clerk 2 position, I believe, a month ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions, yes, Councilor Sanchez?
Thank you, City Collector, for coming and presenting. I've had a experience with you in the past, and I was very grateful. It ended up being a positive story. How do you feel with these staffing levels? Are you able to get your work done?
Yes, we have good staff. We have staff members cross-trained. So we're always ready to adjust if we need to. So yes, we do.
just ask you for clarification? So the taxes are due on a certain date, but do you give a little leeway for people if they can't, I don't know if you say, start assessing penalties right after the due date, or whether you have a little leeway for?
There, for the tax deadlines, so there is a grace period till the end of the month. But we also, if a taxpayer is having a specific medical and financial hardship, they can reach out to us and we will work with them on those situations.
I have found your department to be very responsive on those issues too, so I very much appreciate that. Councilor Vargas.
Thank you, Madam. I'm sorry, another question. Is anything that we can do to help these taxpayers when they get behind on their taxes, like one quarter and then the second quarter comes in, and then the department's asking for the full amount of the taxes?
Yeah, we don't actually, the interest policy changed several years ago. So now if you're delinquent one quarter, we don't require the entire amount due, just to pay current up to the quarter that is delinquent plus the interest. At one time, we required full payment while the interest will continue to accrue. That doesn't happen.
Good news to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do for the city.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have up next the forward.
We have with us City Controller Dante Bellini. I'm not sure if everyone has had a chance to meet him yet, but this is Dante. I'm following the same sort of similar format as the nurse collectors. If you'd like to follow along with the controllers in your budget book. Great. This is a very small revenue generating department, so bringing in about $15,000 a year in miscellaneous receipts. Moving on to expenditures, total salaries for fiscal 24 is official was $985,536. This is an increase of $33,412 over the 23 budget. The change in salaries is due to contractual 10-year cost of living adjustment of 2.75%. Step increases and defunding of a vacant fiscal officer of $53,035, and also that change in attrition. Benefits in the controller's office is budgeted at fiscal year 24 at $670,695. This is a decrease of $175 from the 23 budget. Moving on to services, total proposed budget services in fiscal 24 are $26,950, an increase in $6,500 over the 23 budget, and this is primarily due to a policy change on mailing payroll checks. So we now mail payroll checks instead of allowing staff to pick them up. So that's the reason for that increased cost. Supplies in this budget is budgeted at $5,000, an increase of $2,500, and that is consistent with departmental spend and trend. This department, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they used to be housed in this department at 797, and just a couple of years ago, we moved back over to City Hall, and so they still have some supplies and things that they need to. And I will turn it over to Dante for any questions you have.
Let me just ask the first question. So the increase in the services of $10,005 is because we're mailing more checks. Is that correct?
It's an increase of $6,500. Yeah.
Right. And then the salary increase was the result of the organizational change.
Well, they reduced one staff member, so they had a savings of $53,035, and then there was a cost of living.
All right, Madam Auditor.
Just for the committee and the council, just to know, because attrition has been removed from the departments, when she's saying there's a savings of that amount, and you don't see it, because she's bringing the attrition that was budgeted last year back in. I did do an analysis, right, threw up the attrition in, and I see the percent changes, And I will provide that to all of you. So that's why they actually had a decrease in their budget by moving a person, so.
Thank you for that clarification. Excellent. All right. Any questions? Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you. Just a super quick one. For the vacant pension administrator, is that in process now to replace them or we're?
Yes,
Okay.
we have been interviewing people for the last month.
Oh, thank you.
Councilor Sanchez, did you have a question? All right. Thank you.
Mr. Friday, so you're kind of.
Yeah, you guys are.
Thank you for your service. And then we have the
Madam
assessor.
Do you want to put that into the record? That document?
Oh, yeah.
Madam Chair, should we enter that into the record?
All right, sorry, we're gonna just take a pause. Thank you. May we mark this exhibit for the Department of whatever.
Controller.
Controller.
I'll make the motion to mark that as.
Exhibit four. Okay. And for second, motion made by Councilor Andujar, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Okay. Go.
The following one in your book is on page 26. Revenue is budgeted at 200,000 for fiscal 24. This is an increase of 200,000, and this is for the statistical rebound that will begin under fiscal 24. So we get reimbursed 80% by the state for our statistical rebound. So this is just that portion of what we think will complete in fiscal 24. And the reimbursement associated. And moving on to expenditure salaries for fiscal 24 is proposed $1,142,559. And this is an increase of $50,156 over the 23 budget. The department has made some organizational changes requests. They are proposing to defund the motor vehicle appraiser of $55,014. They'd like to instead fund a commercial appraiser at a cost of $83,642. They'd like to defund a senior clerk of $46,386 and instead fund a clerk two for $35,598. And this kind of creates a path of growth for that office. So someone can come in and start out as a clerk two and eventually move up to senior clerk. Gain experience in the Alden office. And the remaining increase to salaries is due to contractual 1033 cost of living of 2.75% and step increases and the change in nutrition. Benefits in fiscal 24 is budgeted at $775,208, a decrease of $40,402 from the 23 budget. Moving on to services, the proposed budget for services is $477,950. This is an increase of $340,822 over the 23 budget, and that is primarily due to the statistical rebound, which will be reimbursed by 80% by the state. Supplies in this budget is consistent with fiscal 23 at $4,500, and that is for office supplies. I'll turn that over to Denise for any questions.
I have a question just on the, explain to me what the commercial appraiser is doing, what that job is.
The commercial appraiser is necessary, especially for the city as we expand our commercial tax base. He has a specialized skill for high-end commercial properties. And I think the city would benefit from having two on staff rather than just one. That would allow more quality control, more day-to-day activity, and just general auditing of our commercial property.
You have no current vacancies, is that correct?
The only vacancy I currently have is appraiser one, which is used for our tangible department.
Yeah.
So we will be posting that soon.
And how long has that been vacant?
February, since February. However, we have somebody within the department who is been paid out of rank and training. So more than likely she'll be moving up into that position and her position will become vacant.
And now that I have you, I just wanted to ask about are we all set with the appeals of the assessments? Is that appeal process done for all? Okay.
Yes, first appeals has closed, they've all been responded to. At this point, they are now in the hands of the Board of Tax Assessment Review.
Okay.
And those meetings occur usually on a monthly basis or so.
Okay, so it's those who wanted to pursue after the initial decision by the assessor are now going to the tax board of appeals.
That's right.
Okay, all right. Yes, Councilor Ingeborg.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just a quick question. So the revenue is, well, one, thank you so much for being here. The revenue is budgeted for additional 200,000 because of the statistical revaluation to be reimbursed by the state. It says that'll happen December 30. That'll be effective for the FY26 budget. So why is that, just for my knowledge, like why is that in this year's budget if it's for the FY26 budget? Like why is that here?
We're going out to bid earlier than usual to get, sometimes we feel like we're on a crunch of trying to really do the full analysis during the evaluation cycle. So I had asked finance if they would be okay with me going out a little bit earlier to give a more in-depth look of these evaluations without always feeling like we're trying to catch up. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
May I ask a follow-up question on that? So are we contracting with Northeast Reval still, or do we go out I can't remember, do we go out and do a bid for?
We have to go out to bid each and every time. So I don't know who the contractor will be until we do our RFP process.
Is it very disruptive to your process to have different reval companies? I know we use Vision Government Solutions, so went to Northeast Reval. I mean.
It's not very disruptive. The only time it becomes disruptive is when we do computer conversions, which we did in this last evaluation. I don't plan to do another computer conversion, so whoever the winning bidder is would have to be able to work off of the current system in place.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Madam.
Two questions. Have the ELO compliance monitor in your budget for 100,000? And maybe what their role is going to be?
So the role is going for the AO compliance person is to review all of our current and potential future properties applying to AO. They're going to audit that they have the stone compliance, that the tenants in the lease tenants there and their lease agreements all comply within the standards for whether it's the income limits or rental income restrictions.
This is beyond what our housing does. This is beyond the 8 law documents that our housing does because they're not under the same qualifications. Is that correct to say?
Yes, that's correct. Rhode Island Housing, the ones that they have restricted within the city, they obviously monitor, well, I should say obviously, from my understanding, they monitor the tenants at those locations and if their lease agreements comply with their restrictions. This would be an additional overlook from the city's perspective.
But the city did not restrict the properties beyond what Rhode Island Housing does. We would not need this vendor. Is that correct to say?
I don't want to say that it's correct. I think it's still helpful to have a second set of eyes over.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Just a clarity question for the auditor. What position are you talking about on the org chart?
Position is a consultant.
It's a better contract.
Contractor.
It's not a permanent position, it's a contract.
Okay, any more questions? All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for all you do for our city.
Thank you very much.
One
Oh,
more
I'm
exhibit.
sorry, we're gonna mark.
This will be 5.
We'll mark this exhibit 5, the assessors. presentation.
I'll make the motion.
All
Exhibit
right.
5.
I'll second.
All right, the motion made by Councilor Vanderbilt, seconded by Councilor Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. So I think with that, we have concluded our business for this evening.
What are these other ones here then? Retirement?
Do we have retirement? I'm sorry.
Are we supposed to do retirement?
We did not do retirement, did we?
Retirement is part of controllers, but I'm happy to.
Oh.
For-
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
we have a
didn't mark
separate-
that as an
yeah, we
exhibit,
didn't
so
mark it as an
I'm
exhibit.
sorry, Mr. Bonito. I do, Sarah, did you guys?
We did, so the retirement office reports to the controller, does have its own small departmental budget. Dante is currently the acting pension administrator, so he represents this budget.
Okay, and that, we have an overview of that. also?
Yeah, that was my kind
Thank you very much. Councilor Vanderbilt. Sorry.
of thorough and pronounced. Or terms of days.
Would you like to briefly run us through the retirement budget?
If you're following along, retirement office on page 24. This is not a regulator department. Salary in fiscal 24 is $314,742. It's an increase of $6,923 over the 23 budget. There are no requested organizational changes, and the increase is just due to the 1033 from 2.75%. Cost of living adjustment step increases. Benefits is budgeted at $244,038, a decrease of $18,922 from the 23 budget. Services, proposed for fiscal 24 is $17,000, an increase of $100 over the 23 budget. And supplies is budgeted at $1,700, which is a decrease of $200 from the 23 budget. There's no capital budget for.
We have more part. Yes, yes, okay. There are no vacancies.
Oh, where, yeah.
Pension administrator is vacant, and I have 2 people out for various reasons, one on maternity leave, so we are a little short-handed, but technically the only vacancy is pension administrator.
Okay. And I'm sorry, tell me, is that posted already and are you in the process of filling out?
Yes, yes.
All right, any questions? Yes.
Just one. How long does it take now for someone when they file for retirement to get their first check?
We have still been able to maintain a 60-day turnaround. Oh, get their first check.
Yeah.
So that, it's multifactorial. We can get the paperwork out to the pensioner, excuse me, to the actuary. We're golden on that, the amount of time it takes them to come back with their calculations. So that's one factor. And then the other factor is when we receive the certified numbers back from the actuary, we send it out to the pensioner and they have to get the paperwork back to us. So those 2 factors, and also the benefits paperwork has to come back to us to start their payroll. Those 3 factors can extend it for years even. We've literally had people hold on to their paperwork for years.
No, if I retire, say you tell me I'm gonna retire July 1st. Theoretically, roughly, when would I get my first check?
Well, we would probably be able to get your paperwork to you. You retired July 1st, we would probably be able to get your paperwork to you near the end of August. And if you got it back to us right away, we could have you, I would say realistically, we would have you on the September payroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming back.
You're very welcome.
Oh, do we have to make a motion?
Oh, we need a
Yes.
motion to mark the retirement exhibit as number 5.
6. I'll make the motion that it should be exhibit 6.
Second.
All right, the motion is made by Councilor Vanderbilt, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
all opposed? All right, thank you so much very much for your presentation.
Oh.
We also have recorded, I don't know if you want to do this recorder.
Yeah, that was left out as well.
Yes, we would like to go over the recorder review. Okay.
And that is on page 28, if you're following along in your budget book. Today, but John Murphy, he's retired city and Aaron Burger Beach, and so he's working 75 hours right now. Transition to office. Revenues budgeted at $4,121,024. That's an increase of $25,150 over the 23 budget. And revenue in this department is driven by the real estate market, and represents the real estate committee tax and recording fees. Moving on to expenses, salaries in 24 is a proposed $247,163. This is an increase of $11,491 over the 23 budget, and there's one requested organizational change with the retirement of Mr. Murphy. We would like to refund a senior land records clerk and instead fund a recorder of deeds, and that change is $6,386. Benefits are budgeted.
Madam Clerk, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Berry has indicated why that's necessary. Please understand that Mr. Murphy was both city tax collector and acting recorder of deeds at no cost to the city. His retirement and the promotion expands a little over her team. We saw fit that that position should be restored back to a full-time recorder. That's why Mr. Berry has done that.
Thank you.
Benefits is budgeted at $283,810, a decrease of $8,003 from the 23 budget. Services for fiscal 24 is proposed to be $98,015, an increase of $10,005, and the increase is due to expenses related to the digitization of records. Total supplies budgeted at $500, a decrease of $220 from the fiscal 23 budget. There's no capital budget.
Okay, questions? Yes, Councilor Rainbow.
Thank you. Just a super quick question. So the 10,000 increase in services, so you're actively digitizing the records right now? Is that like a cost, like an expense, like that you're like a firm you're using or like a contractor? Like what's the cost for digitization?
It's an ongoing process with the company that the city has its current contract with. This is an expansion contract for us to digitize more records, hopefully allow title searchers and attorneys not to have to come into city hall. We have expanded that when there are missing microfilm records or there's been a problem at the contract ring for our own staff people, and we take some of that work and that's the number that's represented.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
I have one, I think he can answer this, I should ask him before. How many homes have the homestead exemption? No.
Our assessor would have that number.
Yeah, I thought John might have known off the top of his head. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Murphy, thank you for all your answers. All you do.
And welcome back.
Yeah. Can't leave. Motion that's entered as
Yes,
exhibit
it is
seven.
And who would like to second that? Okay. Motion made by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Have we covered everyone who's here?
I mean, we do have the finance administration's budget, if you want to quickly go through that as well.
Okay, yes, we will. The more we get off, the more.
Yeah.
Substitution pricing as well.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, oh. What's this one called? Sorry.
This is finance.
We're gonna have
This is finance.
For the org chart. We're gonna have a motion to set the org chart.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Councilor Sanchez, seconded by Councilor Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Is there, I have two retirements instead of finance.
Oh.
Is there a second? Oh, are you sure?
Yes.
So giving.
The heading is incorrect on the narrative for finance administration, so
How was
What are you
it?
correct?
How was it?
And so the header for the Department of Finance Administration says the phone number here is retirement, so that might. be-
Oh, maybe that's why it's retirement.
That was a clerical error.
Oh, okay. No worries.
This is on page 22 of your budget. This is not a revenue generating department. Total salaries in fiscal 24 is proposed at $863,057. This is an increase of $75,445 over the 23 budget. We are not requesting any organizational changes. And the increase is just due to the cost of living adjustments, step increases, and the attrition change. Benefits is budgeted at $429,860, an increase of $11,806 over the 23 budget. Moving on to services, total proposed budget for services for fiscal 24 is $138,860. This is an increase of $3,000 from the 23 budget. And this is due to adding some additional money for some professional development for finance staff. Supplies is budgeted at $3,600 and is consistent with the 23 budget. There's no capital budget listed.
Questions?
My question is comment.
Yes, Counselor Annabelle.
Under services, it says a decrease of 3,000, but you said an increase, that's just a typo.
Yes. The increase for the benefits?
So this is just an allocation change. We get the numbers from the actuary for the pension, and it's broken down by police and fire and class A. And so some departments, it looks like that allocation is going down. In total, we have budgeted the entire ABC. Police and fire did go up this year in those line items, so some of the departmental has gone down. And then we did see a small decrease in healthcare expenses in this budget, so some of the.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Are we finished?
Oh,
Mark,
we have to put the exhibit in, yes.
All right.
The record. So we're on 8.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Annabelle, seconded by Counselor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. We look forward to seeing you again.
I'll second.
Motion made by Counselor Annabelle, seconded by Counselor Taylor. All in favor?
Aye. What do we
Adjourn.
No, we didn't continue those items.
Oh,
But the budget items have to be continued.
So, may I have a motion to withdraw the motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Withdraw. I'll motion to withdraw.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, so the motion is made by Counselor Annabelle, seconded by Counselor Taylor. I have a motion to continue matters
3 to 6.
3 to 6.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all right, the motion to continue items 3 through 6, Counselor Taylor, seconded by Counselor Annabelle, seconded by Taylor.
We look alike.
All in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed? Okay, anything else, Madam Clerk?
That is it. Now, motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
I have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that
All
one.
right, Counselor Annabelle, seconded by Counselor Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thanks.
Yeah. When do you leave for your cruise?
Bring this other chair back to the.